Hello, and welcome back to WeHo Channel 36. And we have part 2 to have our fabulous Barabara Lamb back again, clinical therapist, talking about aliens. I know you're laughing, some of you people and everything, but Barbara and I believe anyhow, and Barbara's right here beside me. And
Hi.
I want to thank you for coming because I know you traveled a lot to come here, but deep in your heart, I know you wouldn't miss it.
That's
anyhow
right.
At the same time.
Yeah.
There's so many things to talk about, and we're going to talk more about the children of aliens. What I want to ask you, how do they come with the word hybrids? Where does that come from? I mean, who started that word?
Yeah, the
Explain.
definition of a hybrid is when you combine two different species into one life form. So we have hybrids of all kinds of things. I mean, we have hybrids of rose bushes and breeds of cats and breeds of dogs. And
All right.
really, if you look around our society, we have many different kinds of hybrids.
Yeah, because that word is
Yeah.
very popular today, more so
Right.
than years ago and everything like that.
I think so. But this that we're talking about tonight is really different because we're talking about hybrids that are a combination of extraterrestrial beings and human beings.
Okay.
So in other words, I call them ET human hybrids.
Right, okay.
Yes, and now that seems to be, well, I'm sure it is, a very deliberate program on the part of some of the many extraterrestrial species.
Now, Barbara,
Yeah.
excuse me, I did mention to her and I asked her, are aliens here on Earth? Yes, she said. I said, are hybrids here on Earth? She said, yes. I said, how would we recognize them? And she said, they look like humans, and so
Yes.
do the children. Okay?
Yeah,
So they are here, and you said they're very technical. A lot of them are doctors, and they tend to go into the scientific professions, right?
many of them do. Anyway, of these hybrids whom I have had the great privilege to know, and to know at some depth, actually.
Excuse me, did that come from your patients?
Not really my patients.
How
but
did you get involved with them? Tell
Yeah.
me. They would
that's-
like to know
that's
out
a
there.
long story, but
But-
I'll try to shorten it down. I'm a regular psychotherapist and do normal psychotherapy work with what I call regular human people.
Okay.
And also, it has happened that beginning in 1991, there were many people who've been coming to me to do regression therapy to find out about their unusual experiences that they've had and that maybe they've wondered about for decades, even many decades in some cases. And it turns out when we do the regressions to one of those unusual experiences that stays in their memory, it turns out that they have had encounters with visiting extraterrestrial beings. So that part of my work started in 1991.
And you started
Yeah.
with just a few patients, and then she ended up with 1,000, you said 750 patients.
Just for the extraterrestrial experiences.
That's
And some of those people, fortunately, have lived within an hour or so of me in Southern California, and therefore they've been able to come for many regressions. One lady even came for 60 regressions, plus other sessions in which we just talked about all this.
Yeah.
So, in other words, since 1991, I've really been greatly privileged. I consider it a huge honor to become aware of the humans who are having encounters with extraterrestrial beings.
which you did.
I have too.
And okay, and I
Yeah.
told a couple of my friends that Barbara had an encounter. One came in your home, right?
Right, a
And it was-
reptilian being.
See if I amphibian with
Reptilian.
lizard-type skin, because
Right.
they all come from different spheres, and
Yes.
depending on their environment as to what they look like, correct?
Yes, well, there
Okay.
are just so many different species
Right.
on different planets.
Okay.
And this is not something that the general public seems to know very much about. And a lot
They
of the
don't
general
want to.
public
They're
don't want to.
fearful.
You're right. And I really can understand that and
But-
appreciate it.
Excuse me,
But-
tell me,
Yeah.
how did this come about? How did he end up in your home?
Oh, on that particular visit? Well, it was just a thing I certainly never had expected. I was just walking through my home one mid-afternoon, plenty of sunlight coming in through the windows, going from my study through the living room on my way to another part of the house. But when I entered the living room, there, just standing right under the chandelier, was a reptilian male.
What did
No.
you do? I mean, how did you feel at
Well,
that
I-
moment, emotionally?
Well,
What
I was surprised. Of course, I was startled.
Were you
because-
scared?
No. The amazing thing is I wasn't scared. You see, by that time, I had been doing probably 12 or 15 years worth of regressing other people to their extraterrestrial experiences. And I knew that always they were returned, and they didn't seem to be permanently harmed or even harmed at all. And sometimes they had been healed by these extraterrestrials. So I figured that here was an extraterrestrial. I did not expect that. But I wasn't afraid of him because of the history, because of so many people I had worked with, and they were all right, and they were getting over any kind of fear or trauma that they might have had before they began doing this work. So there was that. And then there was another factor which was very, very important, and that was that this particular being, even though he was a male reptilian, and a lot of people are very, afraid.
Of course. I mean,
of
let's face it,
big,
the average
husky
person would.
male reptilian beings.
You're amazing that you
yeah.
reacted the way you did. I know
Well, you see,
that's your business.
he exuded such a feeling of friendliness, likableness, safety, that I'm still surprised about this all these years later, that I just went right over to him. I felt like, oh, this is somebody I'd like to know. Like you might see a person in a cocktail
Excuse
party
me,
or
I'm not
something.
laughing at you,
Yeah.
but to hear something like this, people say, okay, tell me more now. Tell me more.
I know.
This is hard to believe.
By the way, I do not expect people to just accept all this at total face value because it sounds so preposterous. But anyway, this being, it startled me that somebody was there. Yes, but startle is a little different than feeling fear.
Why do you think he visited you? Because
Oh, I will tell you.
Yeah, tell me.
Yeah, there's
Okay, yeah,
there is
let's-
definitely a
okay.
reason that he gave for that. So anyway, he just seemed like such a nice guy, even though he's so very, very different looking, and I've never been comfortable with reptiles here on Earth.
I mean, really ghastly looking, really.
Not ghastly looking, no. He definitely had sort of mottled skin and
How
all
tall?
over. Just a little taller than I, so I think he was probably around 5'5" or 5'6" inches at the most. So he wasn't huge, but he was very muscularly built.
Okay, can I
Similar
ask you
to
something?
a
Excuse me.
gymnast. One of our, like an Olympic gymnast male. So he's very, a lot of muscles around his shoulders and arms and chest. He was very fit, very buff.
Okay, did
Yeah.
he crawl like amphibians, or did he
No.
stand up straight?
No, he was standing up straight the whole time, just the way that we do. So in other words, it was just like suddenly seeing somebody you like standing in your space.
What were
and-
his
and
feet
you
like?
would
Did he have
go-
claws on his feet, or
Well,
what? How
I
were they?
noticed the whole body as I walked toward him. I didn't in particular notice his hands, but I went right over to him. He had his hand out as if for a handshake.
Uh-huh.
And I went right over, and held his hand.
Right.
And we stood there for several minutes with our hands holding like that. Now, definitely, I made a point in that experience of not looking down at his hands, his one hand, because I thought that if I would see claws or talons or something like that, it would really ruin the experience for me.
Right.
And I was having a good experience with him.
Uh-huh.
So I held his hand for the several minutes that he was there.
Right.
And I looked up a little bit into his eyes. They were beautiful, round, bright yellow eyes. It's kind of shiny, like a yellow marble. Beautiful, really.
Mm.
And then the iris and pupil, well, he didn't have irises, but the pupils were kind of like a little vertical, like a little lightning strike look. In other words, a vertical slit with a little jog in it.
Okay.
And of course, I was fascinated. These beautiful eyes and different pupils, and they were looking right into my eyes, and then all surrounded by sort of various shades of green and brown and some tan on his neck. And it was sort of a mottled skin and varied coloring, kind of like our camouflage uniforms. In that sense of mottling of color.
Okay, what did he say to you?
But it was more like smaller areas of the variation of color. So once we locked hands, and I was looking at his eyes, he said, and I must say that I didn't know consciously about this part. I didn't know consciously about what he said until I had later on had a colleague regress me to that experience to get the details. So what I was consciously aware of was seeing him, going over to him, holding his hand, looking in his eyes, liking it, and for maybe a minute or so. And then consciously, I was aware that just suddenly, poofed, he wasn't there. But I knew from many other people's experiences that there probably had been more to the experience than I could consciously remember, which is typical for people having extraterrestrial encounters. So I had a colleague come a week or so later to regress me to get the details.
Right.
And that's when the information came through. So the information was that he said, Barbara. So he already knew me, even though I hadn't known him. Okay. He knew who I was, and he said, now you know. Now you know that we are real, that we really do. We beings from elsewhere. He didn't use the word extraterrestrial because that's, of course, a word from our point of view here on Earth. But he said, those of us from elsewhere, now you know that we really, truly do come and visit human people. And we know that you do all this regression work with people to help them to remember the details of their experiences with those from elsewhere. He used that term several times. And he said, we know that when you're doing that work, you are very much with them. You are believing it as it's coming forth from them, from the subconscious part of their mind in the regressions, and you're accepting it, you're believing it, you know it's true, they know it's true, they rank it after the regression as, yeah, that was a real experience, that wasn't a fantasy, it wasn't a dream, that really happened. So he said, we know that when you're doing the work, you're very, very much with it, you're dedicated to it, you're being very helpful to people in regressing them if they want.
That's
a regression
understandable.
to
Yeah,
this kind of
that's-
experience.
Yeah, definitely.
And yet we also know, and he was accurate, we also know that if you're away on vacation or in some situation where you're not doing one of those regressions for 2 or 3 weeks, you're having sort of a break from it, that once in a while the thought occurs to you, I wonder if this could really be true, really, really, really be true.
Mm-hmm.
Now, he was right, because when I wasn't doing this work for a while, every once in a while I would wonder. Just because the whole concept of this is so different than what we grew up with.
Oh, it's so intriguing. It's just
so
so way out there.
Unknown. I didn't grow up even with an interest in science fiction.
Mm-hmm.
So my conditioning had been very much on this plane, this earth, and also I had interest in spiritual development.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't until 1991 that I really found myself getting into this particular kind of work.
So, excuse me, I want to ask you, when they speak, will this species, amphibian, will do it telepathically?
Yes.
But do some of them talk? Are they verbal like we are?
I don't know of any that talk the way that we do. Some of my clients report that with some of the beings, not this type, but some of the beings, for instance, the mantis beings, as one example, that they make a clicking sound. They talk to each other with a kind of a clicking, a rhythm of clicking. And yet, when they talk to a person, they talk in English, telepathically. And I hear from people in other countries who are having these ET encounters that they are talked to telepathically in their own language. So these beings, I think, are very brilliant. And no matter what the language of the person is, they will be able to communicate in that language. But I've never heard of any of the species of extraterrestrials who open their mouths and talk with a voice to the humans.
Okay, but when they come on Earth and they become one of us, of course, they're verbal and they talk like we do when they come here.
Yes, but that whole thing doesn't happen exactly that way, okay?
What do you mean by that?
Well, could I just finish with the
Of course, go
reptilian
ahead.
experience?
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
So he said, and I think that this is worth knowing for people who are having these experiences, and some of your viewers probably are, whether they're totally aware of it or not. But he said that others like him sometimes will come to other humans who are having experiences with those from elsewhere. In other words, again, extraterrestrial beings, as we would call them. And they come simply for validation. They will appear like he did, just suddenly, poofed, be there to a person who's having these experiences, and may just appear, for instance, behind the person when the person is looking in a mirror. And so they'll appear for just a moment until the person looking in the mirror sees this one, and then
they disappear?
They're gone. They have a way, I cannot explain it, but they have a way of just appearing and then disappearing. So,
like with the spaceships, too, right?
Yes.
Okay.
So this may be that they have a way of speeding up their frequencies to such an extent that our eyes don't see them anymore. That's one possibility. Another possibility is that they can sort of go in and out of dimensions. So when they're in our third dimension, they can be seen by us and felt, like he was. I definitely physically felt him. And then when it seems like poofed, they disappear. Maybe they're just, and I don't know how they do this, but just entering another dimension and therefore we don't see them anymore. So he went on to say that he had been especially bred to be a friendly ambassador. I think that's nice, a friendly ambassador.
That is very interesting.
To visit humans who were having these encounters with the other beings, and who may be wondering about that a bit. Could this really be true? I certainly think it is, but could it really be true? And to just appear and validate, yes, we do come.
To make us feel more comfortable.
Yes, and help them realize that it's okay to accept the truth of this. They're not going crazy. I mean, they really are having these experiences. So there's apparently a group of them, I don't know how many, who do come and do that validating. Now, one of the wonderful things that I got out of this experience was to realize that a lot of these extraterrestrial beings know a lot about us. For instance, as I said, he knew about my thought process. He knew about when I was completely believing and accepting this phenomenon and people's experiences. And he knew that sometimes I would still question it.
They're so
because
far
of my
advanced.
Human life conditioning.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and I have found from other instances with other beings that, yes, indeed, they have the kind of intelligence, or maybe we should say the methods, of knowing a lot about us humans, even though we don't know a lot about them. And maybe they do remote viewing, which some of our people do. It's a special training for that, and many people do have that ability. Maybe a lot of them just very naturally have that ability, and they kind of tune in on this human or this group of humans and really get the information about how the person or the group actually operates and what they think and what they feel. So that's been corroborated in other experiences by other beings as well.
Now, when you were on the spaceship, you were inside a spaceship, right?
On another occasion, I was.
On another occasion.
Yeah.
And you said you recall them, putting something on your head, or they wanted to get information from you?
Yes.
So what did they do exactly with your head?
Well, that was another instance of beings. Now, these were very different beings than the reptilian. Just a totally different species.
In what way?
First of all, there were a lot of little ones, little sort of bluish gray beings with the typical great big almond eyes and the big heads and the
the ones that people
chins.
See and talk about all the time, right? Okay.
Except that they were so cute.
They were cute?
Darling. I really liked them. I was intrigued. I had heard from so many people about the little gray beings that come and take them and do some medical procedures on the UFOs, and they had not reported liking them, that they seemed sort of cold-hearted, very matter-of-fact, very businesslike, that they had tasks to do, and they were no nonsense. They just went about doing them. And so that's what I would have thought, I would have felt. But I didn't. These beings were like little children. They were curious. They were so curious about me.
And were they clicking?
No, I didn't notice any clicking.
No.
But you see what happened?
Noises came out of their mouth?
Nothing.
Nothing?
No noises.
No squeaks or nothing like that?
Nothing.
How were they communicating? Telepathically again?
Yeah. So what happened in that experience is that I was in my car driving down the California 101 freeway, coming back from Santa Barbara at midnight to my home in further south, about 2.5 hours away from there, and coming along the 101 freeway along the Pacific coast, that's when my whole car, my Subaru wagon, and I were taken up in a horizontal beam of light and then lifted up and deposited onto the floor of what certainly seemed like a roundish or oval-shaped craft.
How did you feel when this was happening to you? I mean, you're in a car, and all of a sudden you're going up in the air and going, now, please be honest, you had to be scared a little bit.
I probably was scared a little bit, but more than that, I was intrigued.
Well, true, I could understand
that. This is really happening to me.
And
I had accompanied so many people through all kinds of abductions before that. I mean, probably 1,000 of them or so before that.
But didn't they say to you when they were abducted, I know I would have the fear like, will I ever get back to Earth? I'll never go back home again. Didn't you have that feeling? Didn't some of your patients have that feeling?
Oh, yes, they did.
That's what I mean. A scary feeling like that.
But I didn't because, fortunately, I had already regressed so many people to their extraterrestrial encounters in which they were taken up onto a craft. And I knew that they had all been brought back, or I wouldn't have been able to work with them, you know. Mm-hmm. And I had never heard of any who never were brought back. So I didn't really worry about that, and I was so comfortable and so accustomed to these things happening through the people I was working with that I was kind of excited, like, oh wow, I'm having my own experience. And so anyway, as soon as the car was lifted up through probably what was an opening in the bottom of the craft, the UFO, and slid onto the ground, then I'd say about 20 or 30 of these little beings, probably about
like midgets?
About 3.5 feet tall, big bald heads, big eyes, but they were kind of a bluish gray, and they're great big almond-shaped eyes, I mean really big. They were kind of a cobalt blue, and they had little thin necks and little spindly bodies. And they were so curious. They rushed over to the car, and they climbed all over the car. So there were some on the hood over me, some on the,
oh my goodness.
What do you call it? In England they call it the bonnet, but the part of the car over the motor. And they were there, and they were looking in the windshield. There were ones over on top looking upside down through the windshield at me, and then there were others looking in all the windows. And even though I remember distinctly locking all the doors of the car before that drive home, because it was midnight, I was alone, and I just thought that was a good idea. But even though the doors were all locked, they opened the doors and they came in, and 2 of them were sitting on the passenger seat right on top of my purse, which I had on that seat, and candies that I had out in case I should need to eat some candy and stay alert on this 2.5-hour drive. Just sat right on it. And the first one came in, and the second one was sort of nudging him out of the way because he wanted to get closer to me and get all the way in the car. And I thought, that's really cute. It's like little human brothers and sisters, little siblings would do that.
Like you said, little children.
Yeah, sort of nudging around. Hey, come on, let me have my turn, that sort of thing.
Right.
And then here they were all around, and a couple of them opened the driver's door, even though I know I had locked it. I don't know how they do that. And they ushered me out, and then they all swarmed around me, and they sort of floated me, it seemed like just a few inches off the floor upright, without really touching me. They had their arms sort of under my armpits, but they weren't really touching me.
And your purse was still in the car?
My purse was still in the car, yep. And everything was okay with that.
Yeah, I know.
As it turned out.
Where would the purse go? Okay, that's it.
So they sort of floated me across this big floor and through a door that had a round top to it into another room. And that's where I saw a big column in the middle of the room and a funny thing, kind of looking like a beehive shape helmet, sort of apparatus way up on this column. And then they took me to a little platform, put me up on that, and sat me down in a chair that had very straight arms. And I think that they had some sort of a belt and clicked me in. Then, very soon, this all happened quickly, they lowered that apparatus down, that helmet-like stuff, and fitted it in over the top of my head. Didn't go down over my face. And so it was kind of like having a helmet of some sort on. And in the meantime, they were all swarming. There was a big apron of these beings all around me, staring up at me, looking so curious. And I was so busy looking at them, I thought, wow, isn't this fun? And they're apparently interested in me, and I'm sure I'm even more interested in them. And they all looked exactly alike. And they didn't really have expressions on their faces, except they just looked curious. Maybe it's because their eyes were so big. And
so what was going on with that helmet thing?
Well, nothing for a few seconds, and then I began to feel some sort of a current or a hum. It was sort of a hum and like an electrical current, but not painful, but definitely something I was aware of. And then I looked above the heads of these little ones standing all around, and there was a big, very tall, very, very white being. I mean, white like paper white. And he was standing behind them. He was a very different species. He certainly wasn't like a grown-up of their type. He was a very different species. Very tall, very thin, totally white, had more of a longer, thinner head, and great, huge eyes, black eyes that were more like sort of a rectangle shape with rounded corners. And
how about their body? What did he have on? Is just his skin like an animal's skin, or
no?
What?
It looked like he had some sort of gown on. Maybe a very, very whatever it was very simple. Just a plain white
cloak,
like a dress cloak.
Right. Okay.
Not a toga pulled over, but just like a shift. You know how women used to wear these straight shifts, that type of thing. And anyway, then, so I caught his eye, and he said, "Hello, Barbara." So again, he had known about me, even though I hadn't known about him.
And verbally, he said that to you?
Well, it was telepathic.
Oh, telepathic.
Yeah, he didn't use a voice.
Okay.
Yeah. The little ones didn't say anything to me at all that I was aware of. And he just spoke his mind to my mind.
Okay, but what I don't understand, when they do that telepathically, anyone can understand when they do that to somebody else, and like I would be able to understand,
yes,
and I know nothing
so.
about telepathic or nothing like that.
Oh,
but
sure.
I would understand what was coming through to my mind.
Yeah. So in other words, one of the intriguing things about this is that we humans who don't communicate that way, I mean, I've known a few people who were so psychically connected with their daughter or their partner or whatever,
right.
They feel that they do some telepathic communication. But certainly most of us don't. And we don't know that we have that ability. So I must have the ability, to some extent, if I could pick up what he was sending with his mind. And it was very, very clear. It was just as if I was hearing clear words with my ear, but I wasn't with my ear. was hearing it in my mind. So anyway, he addressed me. He already knew. And he said, I suppose you wonder what we're doing, because there was this current going through my head. And I said, yes, I am wondering. And he said, don't worry. This is not harming you. It's not damaging you in any way. We're just simply, and then he paused and said, I'm going to use a term that I know that you know now. This experience was in 1997, by the way. And by 1997, I was really getting into using a computer and was familiar with the term downloading of information. So he knew that. How? I don't know. He knew that from afar. Amazing. So he said, I'm going to use a word that I know that you know the meaning of now. We are downloading information from your brain.
Oh.
We want to know about all those people you have been doing regression work with, who have had experiences with many different beings from the cosmos. And we want to know what they knew about their experiences before they did regression. We want to know what they found out during their regressions with these beings.
Okay.
And thirdly, we want to know how the whole thing of their having these experiences is affecting them. And then he rushed on to say, don't be worried. We're not taking your memories. We're making a copy of them. So then the woman who is regressing me was very well known and respected, Dolores Cannon. And she then jumped in and said, Barbara, ask him what they do with the information. So with my mind, I asked him, and he was able to hear that. And so in the regression, which is interesting that here in like the third weekend in June 1997, she was doing this regression with me to an experience that had happened 3 weeks earlier. In other words, what we think of as the past.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
But in doing that regression, he was able to be aware of her asking the question. And he said, in answer to that, he said, we broadcast this information. And she said, well, how do you do that?
Yeah, where does it go?
So she'd ask the question, I would repeat the question in my own mind, he would answer the question to me, and I would repeat it out loud to her.
Okay. Okay.
That's how this went on for quite a while. For a whole hour or so. And he said, well, it's very similar to your radio broadcasting or your television broadcasting, that there are channels of signals, lines, so to speak, of channels, signals, and we broadcast through a particular one. And she said, well, who listens to that? Because we had never heard anything like that, on our radios or anything. And he said, well, those who visit Earth who are interested, they will tune into that channel. Many who visit Earth would not be interested in that information, but some of the visitors are interested. So they would tune in. If they want to know the answers to those same kinds of questions, they would be delighted to tune into that channel and get that information. So then the rest of the session was that Dolores was asking questions to me, and he would hear those questions, and after 3 or 4 questions of sort of repeating through me back and forth, he said, I can hear her questions. You don't have to repeat them to me, but I will have to give them to you, to me, and then you give them to her, because she couldn't hear him because it wasn't her regression.
Okay.
So this whole thing really stimulates the question, well, what is it about time? I mean, we were regressing to an experience that had happened 3 weeks earlier. And yet here and now, while the regression was going on, he could hear her questions and answer them through me.
That's what I mean. They're so intelligent. I mean, we're
Yes.
smart here. We have intelligent, intellectual scientists, and of course we go to the moon and we go up there, and these people are a different breed entirely.
Yeah, they seem to have abilities that most of us have not developed yet.
We haven't encountered
maybe
anything.
we have the potential, and we just haven't. Or maybe there
And
are
this is
some
what we
who-
could learn from them.
Oh yeah, there's so much we can learn from them.
Oh my goodness! Just
So
think how
much.
wonderful that would be.
Yes.
That we could get their experience, and we could give them our experience and technology, and we work together.
And they're-
Folks,
and
it's
they're-
going to happen eventually.
Yes, I think so, and I certainly hope so. So anyway, this is a beginning of this type of thing, this communicating, exchanging, and all with very, very goodwill.
It is. I want to
The
ask
whole
you.
thing, very goodwill.
Okay, you were in a car, that happened, and you were doing all that. And then did they put you back in the car and then put the car in the ground again?
Yes.
How did that happen?
Well,
How was that?
that happened through a beam of light coming the other direction.
Okay.
Rather than from the ground upward, it went from the ship downward, and they put me on what I think was pretty much the same spot on the freeway. Now, at the time when this was actually happening, I didn't know that all of that we've just talked about, that happened. What I did know is that there were some very strange things going on the freeway that night.
Such
Now, that
as?
was consciously in my
Beside?
awareness. Like, for instance, first thing I noticed was that there were no other cars on the freeway
Okay.
as I was driving along. And I thought, that's really strange because it's a Friday night. This is a major freeway going from LA up to Santa Barbara and all the coastal towns along there. And surely there would be people driving up the coast and
Oh, definitely.
some driving down. I thought,
Definitely.
well, that's odd,
And what else?
but
What-
I'm okay. And then I saw over the ocean, because this freeway goes fairly close to the coast, I saw a flash, absolutely round flash of light that lasted just like 1 full second.
And disappeared.
It blinked out. It was just a perfectly round flash, like a sphere,
Okay.
and it disappeared. I thought, wow, what was that? Couldn't have been lightning, because that's a more diffusive area of light. And then I noticed that over the hills to my left, so that would be to the east, where I knew there were no towns, there was a big, big arc of light showing over the top of the hills. And I thought, well, I wonder what that could be coming from, because I know that there were no towns or no houses over there. And so I just was curious. And then, but I thought, well, that's weird, but I'm okay. Car's running well. I'm alert. I'm safe. And then I noticed what I thought was a big trailer truck, sort of half on the freeway and half off of it, ahead of me. And it had what I thought were lights all around the back end of it. I thought, probably the truck had had a flat tire, and those were flares and lights so that they could change the tire. But as I got closer to it, and this is all my conscious memory, as it got closer to it, and very close to it, I slowed down because I didn't want to hit it. I noticed that, these are not people. And I really got kind of choked up. And Dolores said, well, what's the matter with Barbara? And I said, they're not people. They're they must be from somewhere else. And she said, well, why are you upset? You're so accustomed to knowing about this with the people you work with. And I said, yeah, but this time it's me having this experience. So for just a couple of moments, I was feeling upset.
Okay, but didn't you think of maybe calling your family and something might happen, or call your children, or call somebody? Or
Well, this was 1997, and I don't think I had a cell phone. I didn't have any means
no, we didn't have
to
that
call
back
anybody.
97. I'm trying to remember
Well, I know
back that far.
I didn't. I don't know if other people did, but so yeah, and so until that moment when I saw that there were these beings walking around what I thought was a big truck stopped on the road. Until then, I was not concerned. I was just sort of puzzled. But then, as soon as I got past that big truck, which seemed unusually long, I thought, then immediately there was a sudden big flash of light, sort of a peachy colored light, right in front of my windshield, and what looked like something like a ribbon or something stretched on a diagonal across the windshield, right on the outside, and all at the same second, flash of light and crack. Something cracked my windshield right in front of my face. So it was like a big spider web crack.
Oh, that's weird.
In the windshield. Yeah. And that I
that
was
is
not happy about at all, because I thought, what if it blows in?
Yeah.
All that glass blowing in on my face. I still have more than 2 hours.
Well, you don't get panic attacks, or you don't do anything like that.
No, I've never had panic attacks, luckily. So then my first impulse was to slow down, stop, back up to those people who looked like they weren't exactly people in back of the truck, and say, what are you doing? What's going on? My windshield just got cracked. But I didn't do that because there was a big resounding voice in my head that said, no, don't slow down, don't stop, don't go back, just keep driving all the way home, which is what I thought I had done, not knowing that right at about that time, with the flash and the crack, that my car and I were then
gives me chilling
lifted
experience. Ooh, that gives me the goosebumps.
Okay.
It does.
But as you can see, I'm all right.
Oh, yeah, I could definitely see that.
All right. Yeah.
But getting back to all of this and everything, the hybrids, I want to get into more exactly, okay?
Yeah.
The hybrids, like, okay, the aliens come here on Earth, and some of them mate and some don't. Depends on what galaxy they come from.
Well, which species they are.
What species
Yes,
and
that
everything.
could be different species in different galaxies, yes.
Okay.
Certainly.
So I guess because they're so intelligent, they get Social Security numbers, they get everything. They live the way we do, okay? Do you think, I saw something on TV, it's kind of way out, and it was about Washington, and they said that we have some aliens that are in Washington and have been connected with the White House. Okay.
Well, that could be. Now, I don't personally know about that.
FBI, don't call me, please.
Yeah.
I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I just heard that. I'm asking you.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I don't know about that, but I can certainly tell you what I do know about. Okay, first of all, in all the years of the 1990s and the early 2000s, I found in many of those regressions that people were having hybrid children. So, in other words, people who are human and they keep living on Earth.
During that time, right?
No, it's still happening now, I think, too.
Okay.
But there were a number of years in which I was learning about them, that people living here on Earth who experience extraterrestrial contacts, that many of them, not all of them, many of them were discovering along the way, bit by bit, that they had hybrid babies living on the ship, and those babies would be born. In other words, they were gestated in tanks of fluid instead of in the womb of a human mother here on Earth. And then at a certain point they would be born, in other words, taken out of the tube, the tank, and dressed and fed and raised as children. And those were hybrid babies made from eggs taken previously from a human woman.
That's what we do today. That's
or
what I
sperm
mean.
From a human man,
right.
and combined with their reproductive and genetic material to make hybrids. Now, that's very, very common for people who have experiences with extraterrestrials. I'm not saying that everybody who has extraterrestrial contact has that happen, but many, many people do. So, in other words, over the years there have been many hybrid babies who grow up on the ships, and they're not human enough to come here. They would not survive our bacteria and viruses, and they don't look human enough to really be very well accepted here.
Right.
So they do spend their whole lives, and they help the ETs. They have a number of different responsibilities and chores that they do.
Yeah, like on their
help
planet.
out.
But I'm really interested in the children here.
Yeah.
So
now there's a whole other group of hybrids who live here with us as regular humans. Now, these are the people that I've been studying a lot for the last 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
And these are the hybrids who are featured in my book, Meet the Hybrids.
Meet the Hybrids.
And the subtitle is The Lives and Missions of E.T. Ambassadors on Earth. A wonderful man in England, and I co-wrote this. His name is Miguel Mendonça. And by the way, the book is available very easily on Amazon.com if you just type in Meet the Hybrids.
It's so wonderful. Barbara, what a title for a movie.
Yes, it would be.
Have you ever been approached?
I haven't been approached, but I would be happy to be.
How?
Oh, it would make a very, very interesting movie.
It's a beautiful cover. Oh, isn't it beautiful, Julie? Look at that.
It kind of suggests that the person is coming from a different
peaceful
dimension.
It's like
very peaceful.
You get a feeling from that,
very
right?
positive.
An emotion of being very comfortable.
Yes.
And presence like that.
Yeah.
But
so
now
this group of hybrids,
that is not an amphibian now.
No.
It looks like part amphibian and part human.
No, it's just, I think what you're referring to, the little sort of areas of light going through.
Probably, and the way the body.
That just means like this person is partly, these hybrids are partly human and partly other beings, some of whom are other dimensional.
Right.
So this is suggesting the cosmos and other dimensions of reality. So these are the hybrids that are featured in this book. This is my primary interest these days. So I have
a lot of research in this.
A lot of research, yes.
A lot of validation.
Yes.
Folks.
Indeed.
Here it is right here. I wish we could read the whole book. Answers to a lot. Definitely. I am going to get this and read this thoroughly.
Oh, good. You would appreciate it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm sure.
I mean, Barbara has an extensive background, and this young lady knows what she's talking about. She's been doing this many, many, many years and has excellent credits. It's well known in L.A. and all over. She travels all over the world giving seminars and speeches about her regression, her encounter with aliens, hybrids, and people talk about it more and more. And in LA area alone,
Mm-hmm.
there are thousands and thousands of people that have been abducted. True?
Oh, yes, yes.
And all over the world,
Sure.
millions
All
of people in
over
every
the world.
country.
Yeah.
And this has been going on because the aliens have been worded in our Bible.
Yep.
They talk about seeing aliens in our Bible. Can you
They
imagine
didn't call
that?
them aliens, but
Yeah, they call
you know,
they
were
called them
really different, and they came from
beings,
the sky.
whatever. Yes,
Yeah.
without any name and everything.
Right.
And
So this group of hybrids is very, very wonderful. I personally know at quite some length about 15 of them, but we really featured 8 particular hybrids in this
have
book.
what names in there too?
Oh, yeah, they're real names.
They're real names
They're
of
real
the hybrids.
people.
Hear that, folks?
Yeah.
You see,
They were able to,
This is wonderful.
come clean. They were
Oh.
willing to be identified. We're not using fictitious names. So,
And they
these-
didn't mind this at all. They didn't
oh
mind.
no, they were thrilled.
They were thrilled for this.
thrilled that we were interviewing them. We had a long interview for probably at least 8
Oh,
hours
I love this.
with each of these people. So each one of them has a chapter to talk about how they became a hybrid, which species they have in their own makeup,
Right.
genetic makeup, and so
Uh-huh.
forth. Sometimes past lives as those types of beings. How they always felt very different, and how they learned.
And how they
eventually that were
acclimated to
hybrids.
our planet here too at the same
Yes,
time.
yeah, and also they've all taken some time to realize, some years to realize their special skills and abilities, and also their sense of mission. Why they are here on Earth as a mixture of these other beings, and it's all for completely helpful, benevolent purpose.
Okay, so they're
Yeah.
here. It's a mixture. Now, these hybrids, could they have children with
A human?
a human?
Yes.
Okay, so
And
this
some of
could
them do.
extend the family on and on and on and on. Now,
Yeah.
would these hybrids do it the way we do it, by sexual contact, or also, by the sperm bank too at the same time?
Well, they could, they would.
Or would they use their method that they have known?
Probably not.
Not,
No,
not,
probably not.
not while they're here.
The ones
okay.
I know of, a couple of them do have children, and in other words, they just grew up here
Okay.
from birth. They were all born here
They were born
from
here.
human mothers
Okay.
and fathers. In most cases, they were already hybridized. They were already had extraterrestrial genetics before they were born. Only one of the 8 wasn't really injected with extraterrestrial DNA until she was 6 years old.
Oh, Barbara, we could go
Yeah.
on and on and on and on. And this time
Yeah,
really went by so fast.
I
And
know.
I've done a lot of shows, okay?
Yeah, yes.
But this show, I am completely thrilled by you.
Oh, great.
Okay? And
Uh-huh.
what we told out there. And, we're going on YouTube and we're going to get
Great.
everything out there, okay?
Oh,
You've been
wonderful.
wonderful.
Thank you. I've certainly enjoyed this.
I can't thank you enough. And I think everyone should go and look into this book,
Meet the Hybrids.
The Hybrids.
Just
the
type
lives,
it into Amazon.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Amazon.
Uh-huh.
The Lives and Missions of Ambassadors on Earth.
ET ambassadors on Earth.
ET ambassadors.
Yeah. So
And-
that's what they're here for.
Right.
In other words, these several extraterrestrial species wanted to be able to help humanity, to help us in how we deal with each other, and to help us to save the earth instead of ruining the earth, and to help us all to really upgrade in consciousness and to eventually ascend into a somewhat higher dimension where life goes so much better.
Oh, we need something.
Oh, yeah.
We need something to happen here.
Yeah, and they know
Okay.
that humans